He walked in on the woman he loved, wrapped in his father's arms. 10 minutes later, he was lying broken on the patio. Everyone called it a tragic accident. But the truth was far worse. Crestview Estates shimmered under a perpetual, almost unnervingly perfect autumn sun. Manicured lawns bled seamlessly into sculpted hedges, framing mansions that spoke less of home and more of dynastic ambition. It was a place built on the illusion of flawless prosperity, a gilded cage where every surface gleamed, reflecting nothing of the shadows gathering within. Here, fortunes were flaunted, but secrets were guarded with far greater ferocity. And in this immaculate world, 3 lives were drawing together on a collision course, bound by threads of desire, desperation, and deceit. At the heart of it all stood Elias Thorne. A titan forged in the crucible of relentless ambition, his name synonymous with the vast tech empire he'd built from sheer will. Now a widower, Elias moved through the opulent halls of his estate with a distinguished air that barely concealed a profound, gnawing loneliness. His success was a fortress, but its walls were cold, the echoes of past sacrifices, particularly concerning his only son, reverberating in the quiet moments. He possessed the kind of power that commanded rooms, yet seemed increasingly haunted by the ghosts of what that power had cost him. Was there any warmth left behind the formidable facade? Then there was Julian Thorne, living perpetually under the colossal weight of his father's legacy. Julian navigated Crestview Estates not as an heir apparent, but as a ghost himself, forever measuring his own worth against an impossible standard. You could see it in the hesitant set of his shoulders, the flicker of insecurity in his eyes that even tailored suits couldn't hide. He craved validation, a sense of self beyond the Thorne name, seeking it desperately in ventures that always seemed to fall short, always compared, always found wanting. His life felt like a constant audition for an approval that never quite materialized. Into this simmering pot of privilege and quiet desperation stepped Serafina Bellwether. She arrived like a breath of exotic air, captivating, intelligent, with eyes that seemed to see right through the polished veneer of Crestview Estates. Her ambition was palpable, a sharp, focused energy honed by a past she never spoke of, hidden behind an easy smile and undeniable charisma. She saw the Thornes, father and son, not just as men, but perhaps as opportunities, stepping stones on a path only she understood. A dangerous game was beginning, one of intricate moves and devastating betrayals. The meticulously crafted world of the Thornes, built on wealth and control, was about to be fractured by passions ignited and secrets unearthed. The air crackled with unspoken tensions, foreshadowing a tragedy that would unravel them all, starting with the very architect of their gilded world. Indeed, Elias Thorne was the architect of this gilded world, a man whose very presence seemed to command the manicured landscapes of Crestview Estates. But the foundations of his empire, Thorne Dynamics, were laid long before, built not with inherited privilege but with a relentless, almost brutal, drive born from less auspicious beginnings around 1955. He possessed an unnerving talent for seeing pathways to profit where others saw only dead ends, transforming a fledgling idea into a global tech behemoth that reshaped industries. Thorne Dynamics wasn't just a company, it was a testament to his indomitable will, a Fortune 500 monument to his genius and ambition. But monuments cast long shadows. Elias's singular focus on building his legacy came at a steep personal price. His marriage to Eleanor, a woman whose quiet strength had once been his anchor, frayed under the constant pressure of his work. Dinners were missed, anniversaries forgotten, conversations cut short by urgent calls. He provided everything material, yet starved the relationship of the one thing it truly needed, his presence. Their son, Julian, grew up seeing more of his father on financial news networks than across the breakfast table. The connection, fragile to begin with, grew thinner with each passing year, strained by expectation and absence. It wasn't until Eleanor's devastatingly swift battle with cancer ended in 2010 that the true cost slammed into Elias. The silence in the sprawling mansion became unbearable, amplifying the echoes of unspoken words and lost moments. Guilt became his constant companion, a corrosive force eating away at the foundations of his carefully constructed life. In the aftermath, Elias attempted to bridge the chasm with Julian, but his methods were as clumsy as they were grand. He threw money at Julian's ventures, opened doors with powerful connections, mistaking financial backing for emotional support. He simply didn't know any other way. These gestures, meant to heal, often felt like just another form of control, deepening the very distance he desperately sought to close. Now, well into his 60s, Elias Thorne rattled around his empire of glass and steel, a king isolated on his throne. The boardrooms buzzed with deference, the galas glittered with admiration, but genuine warmth seemed perpetually out of reach. He had achieved staggering success, the kind most men only dream of, yet a profound loneliness permeated his existence. Beneath the impeccably tailored suits and commanding presence resided a vulnerability, a yearning for a connection that wealth couldn't buy and power couldn't command. This internal war, pride in his vast achievements battling the hollow ache of regret, left him exposed, unknowingly creating the perfect conditions for the storm already gathering on the horizon. His carefully built world offered little defense against the complexities of the human heart, especially his own, leaving the next generation to navigate the wreckage. His carefully built world offered little defense against the complexities of the human heart, especially his own, leaving the next generation to navigate the wreckage. And navigating the wreckage, or rather, living perpetually within the blast radius of Elias Thorne's success, defying Julian Thorne's existence. Growing up wasn't just privileged, it was suffocating. Every achievement felt measured against the colossal scale of Thorne dynamics, every failure magnified under the glare of his father's shadow. He had the best education, access to any resource imaginable, yet forging a distinct identity felt like trying to sculpt granite with his bare hands. It was a constant, draining battle. His professional life became a series of ambitious starts and underwhelming finishes. There was the trendy fusion restaurant in the city's arts district, shuttered within 18 months. Then came the tech startup, a platform meant to revolutionize social networking, which dissolved amid funding issues and internal disagreements. Each attempt was fueled by a desperate need to prove himself, to create something undeniably his, untainted by the Thorne name. Now, he ran a digital marketing agency, moderately successful by normal standards, pulling in decent contracts. But in the Thorne universe? It felt like a footnote, a hobby almost, paling embarrassingly against the global empire his father commanded. This constant comparison bred a deep, corrosive insecurity. It manifested as a persistent imposter syndrome, the quiet whisper that insisted any success was luck or nepotism, never truly earned. Darker moods, waves of quiet depression, often followed. Then, in 2021, during a rare moment of escape at an unassuming downtown coffee shop, he met Serafina Bellwether. It felt like opening a window in a sealed room. Her energy, her apparent fascination with his ideas, her seemingly unwavering belief in his untapped potential, it was intoxicating. For the first time in what felt like forever, Julian felt seen not as Elias Thorne's son, but simply as Julian. She offered validation, something he craved more than the financial backing his father so readily provided. With Serafina, he started to tentatively sketch a future where he wasn't just an heir apparent but the architect of his own life, finally free from the crushing weight of expectation. As their connection deepened, he found himself opening up, revealing the tangled, painful dynamics of his relationship with Elias, the frustrations, the profound vulnerability, the simple, aching desire for his father's genuine, unqualified approval. He laid bare his deepest insecurities, trusting her completely, unaware that this very trust was weaving him into a far more dangerous and intricate design. But who exactly was Serafina Bellwether, the woman in whom Julian Thorne had placed such profound, vulnerable trust? Behind the dazzling smile and razor-sharp wit that captivated Julian lay a history forged in adversity, a past that shaped her every move. Her roots were sunk deep in the hard soil of rural Pennsylvania, the daughter of a teenage mother who struggled constantly and a father who was never more than a name on a birth certificate. Stability was a foreign concept. Her childhood was a blur of temporary addresses, shifting caregivers, and sometimes the impersonal structure of the foster care system. Survival meant adaptation, learning to read people and situations quickly, becoming whoever she needed to be. This constant state of flux fostered an incredible resilience but also a deep-seated craving for security. From a young age, Serafina recognized education as her only viable escape route. She possessed a fierce intelligence that cut through the chaos around her. Schoolwork became her refuge and her weapon. She poured every ounce of energy into her studies, earning a string of scholarships that propelled her far from her hometown to the bustling streets of Boston for college. It was there, amidst the city's blend of history and ambition, that her own hunger truly crystallized. She juggled multiple part-time jobs, waiting tables, tutoring, library assistant, while maintaining stellar grades, driven by an almost desperate need to build a life diametrically opposed to the one she'd left behind. Upon graduating, she dove headfirst into the competitive world of marketing. Her sharp mind, combined with an innate charisma and that chameleon-like ability to connect with anyone, saw her rise rapidly through the ranks of a prestigious firm. Meeting Julian Thorne was complicated. There was an undeniable pull towards his quiet kindness, his raw vulnerability, qualities utterly absent from her formative years. A genuine affection took root. Yet, she couldn't ignore the gravitational force of his name. Thorne. It represented everything she'd fought tooth and nail for, not just wealth, but influence, respect, unshakable stability. The encounter wasn't merely with a man, but with a symbol, a potential shortcut to the life she felt she deserved. Her complex motivations tangled, the authentic desire for connection warred with the pragmatic, ambitious drive honed by years of scarcity. She genuinely cared for Julian, but the allure of the world he inhabited, and the power wielded by the man at its center, began to exert its own subtle, dangerous pressure. This internal conflict simmered beneath the surface as she navigated the glittering, complex world of the Thornes, a world that would soon present temptations far greater than she could have anticipated. That subtle, dangerous pressure found its flashpoint on a crisp autumn evening, under the glittering chandeliers of the Thorne Dynamics annual charity gala. Serafina, a vision in emerald silk that clung to her form, was on Julian's arm, navigating the currents of high society for the first time. She watched Julian, earnest and slightly anxious, trying to connect with potential backers for his latest venture. Then, Elias Thorne approached. While Julian was momentarily pulled away into another conversation, Elias engaged Serafina. His presence was magnetic, an effortless confidence that seemed to command the very air around him. They didn't talk business, they talked art, global politics, debated philosophy, subjects that sparked a fire in Serafina, areas where Julian, despite his kindness, often seemed adrift. The contrast was stark, unsettling. Julian's gentle uncertainty versus Elias's decisive, world-wise perspective. It was intoxicating. In the weeks that followed, thoughts of Elias Thorne became unwelcome intrusions. Serafina tried to rationalize them away, simple curiosity about her boyfriend's powerful father. But it felt like more. A flicker of memory, the intensity in his eyes as he debated a point, the low timbre of his laugh. It was a pull towards something forbidden, something potent. The definitive moment, the point of no return, arrived during a tense family dinner at the imposing Thorne estate. Julian, looking stressed, excused himself to handle an urgent call related to his struggling agency. Silence descended between Serafina and Elias, alone in the grand, dimly lit study lined with imposing portraits of Thorne ancestors. They stood before a vast abstract painting, vibrant and chaotic. As Elias gestured towards a specific brushstroke, his hand accidentally brushed hers. An electric jolt, undeniable and shocking, passed between them. His voice, when he spoke, was low, almost a whisper. "You make me feel awake," he confessed, his gaze holding hers. "Like I haven't felt in years." Her heart hammered against her ribs. She saw the conflict in his eyes, mirroring her own. "I feel it too," she admitted, the words barely audible, sealing their pact. An invisible line had been irrevocably crossed. What started as charged glances and lingering touches swiftly escalated. Their forbidden relationship demanded secrecy. Clandestine meetings in discreet corners of expensive restaurants, walks through rain-slicked city parks where they wouldn't be recognized, stolen hours in one of Elias's rarely used city apartments when Julian was safely occupied elsewhere. Passion ignited, fierce and consuming. Yet, turmoil brewed beneath. Elias wrestled with profound guilt, The betrayal of his son, the ghost of his late wife, warring against the intoxicating vitality Serafina reignited in him. He felt sane, not as the business titan or grieving widower, but simply as a man. Serafina, too, was caught in an emotional riptide. Julian offered warmth, stability, genuine affection she still craved. But Elias tapped into something deeper, her ambition, her desire, a thrilling sense of power and shared understanding that both excited and terrified her. They became adept at the art of deception, weaving intricate lies, but the secret festered, a growing weight threatening to shatter everything. While Serafina and Elias navigated their increasingly complex deception, Julian Thorne, preoccupied with his own professional struggles, began sensing subtle shifts in the atmosphere around him. The first signs were small, easily dismissed. Serafina seemed restless. Often distracted during their conversations, her gaze distant, her laughter sometimes forced. Then came the unexplained lateness. Dates missed, evenings cut short with vague excuses, a demanding client, unexpected traffic jams. Initially, Julian brushed it off, chiding himself for his own insecurities. Was he projecting his business anxieties onto their relationship? He tried to silence the creeping doubt. But the inconsistencies mounted, becoming harder to ignore. There were hushed phone conversations abruptly ended when he entered the room, her hand quickly shielding the screen. Texts vanished moments after arriving. Once, burying his face in her hair, he caught the faint, unfamiliar scent of an expensive perfume, rich, complex, definitely not hers. Where had that come from? Paranoia started to seep in, cold and unwelcome. Sleepless nights became frequent, his mind racing, constructing scenarios of betrayal he desperately tried to push away. He found himself scrolling through her social media, searching for clues, finding nothing tangible but feeling the wrongness deepen. The easy trust that had been the bedrock of their connection was eroding, replaced by a gnawing suspicion. In a moment of vulnerability, needing reassurance, Julian confided his vague fears to his father. Over Scotch and Elias's imposing study, Julian spoke hesitantly about Serafina's changed behavior. Elias listened, his expression carefully crafted concern. "Maybe you should just talk to her openly, Julian," Elias advised, his voice smooth. "Misunderstandings happen. Clear the air." The cruel irony of seeking counsel from the source of the deception was lost on Julian. Armed with this advice, Julian attempted a conversation. He was clumsy, indirect, and Serafina, now skilled in deflection, turned it back on him masterfully. "Are you keeping tabs on me now?" she asked, eyes flashing with hurt and indignation. "Is this about your insecurities? I thought we were past this." Stung and riddled with guilt, Julian immediately backtracked, apologizing profusely, promising more trust. But the seed of doubt, once planted, refused to die. It grew, watered by small, unsettling observations. An inside joke between Serafina and his father at dinner, a quick exchange of glances that felt charged, lingered just a second too long. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was profoundly wrong. His suspicion solidified into grim certainty. He had to know. With a sense of shame warring with determination, Julian took action. He installed a tracking app on Serafina's phone, hidden beneath the guise of a security upgrade. He started meticulously logging her unexplained absences. Finally, crossing a personal Rubicon, he hired a private investigator. The investigation was underway, a silent clock ticking down towards a truth he might not be prepared to face. The investigation didn't take long to bear its bitter fruit. The private investigator's call came on a sweltering August afternoon. Julian Thorne, feigning a sudden illness to escape work, felt his heart hammer against his ribs as he tailed Serafina Bellwether's car. Not towards her downtown office, but snaking along the coastal highway, towards a secluded, multi-million-dollar beach house he knew belonged to his father, a place Elias used for discreet corporate strategy sessions. His blood ran cold. As Serafina pulled into the hidden driveway, Julian parked further down, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Partially obscured by ancient cypress trees sat his father's unmistakable silver Aston Martin. Discovery. Betrayal. The confirmation hit him with the force of a physical blow. Turn back? Pretend he hadn't seen? No. A raw, primal rage propelled him forward. Legs feeling like lead, he approached the house. The heavy oak door was unlocked. Such arrogance. Inside, the air conditioning hummed, a stark contrast to the heat outside. Then he heard it, voices drifting down from the master suite upstairs. Soft laughter, intimate murmurs. The unmistakable cadence of passion. Each step up the polished staircase felt like wading through quicksand. He reached the landing, paused before the closed bedroom door, his hand trembling on the cold metal knob. This moment would change everything. He knew it. A deep breath, then entry. The scene burned itself into his memory. Elias and Serafina, tangled together in the unmade bed, frozen mid-embrace at his sudden appearance. Time fractured. 3 figures locked in a tableau of horrified silence. Serafina moved first, scrambling for the sheet, her face a mask of pure guilt and fear. Elias recovered more quickly, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features before settling into a strange mix of defiance and acute embarrassment. Julian, Elias began, his voice uncertain, a rare crack in the usual commanding tone. But Julian exploded. Years of simmering resentment, insecurity, the crushing weight of the father's shadow, now ignited by this ultimate betrayal, erupted in a guttural roar of pure anguish. How could you? His fury lashed out, primarily aimed at his father, the architect of his lifelong inadequacy, but then his gaze swung to Serafina, his voice breaking. I loved you. Trusted you. Serafina, tears streaming, reached out. Julian, please, it's not, let me explain. He recoiled, rage blinding him. He swept a crystal lamp from a side table, it shattered against the far wall. A bitter laugh escaped him. Explain what? Finding my girlfriend in bed with my father? Elias stepped forward, attempting damage control. Son, calm down. We never intended. That ignited Julian further. Intended what? This? What outcome did you possibly expect? The room became a pressure cooker of raw emotion. Accusations flew like shrapnel. Old wounds were torn open, neglect, favoritism, Elias's cutting remarks over the years. Elias, patience snapping, finally roared back, justifying himself with the cruelest weapon. She makes me feel alive. Something your mother, something you never managed. The mention of Eleanor was sacrilege. Amidst the chaos, Julian spotted his phone on a dresser. Proof. Exposure. Everyone will know, he choked out, lunging for it. Panic flared in Elias's eyes, the scandal, Thorne dynamics, everything crumbling. And pure, desperate self-preservation, Elias moved to intercept him, hands outstretched not necessarily to shove violently, but to stop him. Caught off balance by the sudden movement, Julian stumbled backward. Towards the open balcony door. Towards the low railing. A horrifying moment of flailing arms, a desperate scrabble for purchase. Then, a look of stunned surprise as his center of gravity shifted irrevocably. A strangled cry. And he was gone, falling 3 stories to the unforgiving stone patio below. The sickening thud below seemed to echo in the sudden, awful silence. Serafina's scream finally tore through the heavy seaside air, a raw sound of pure panic. She fumbled for her phone, fingers shaking uncontrollably, muttering 911. Have to call. But Elias Thorne, already at the balcony railing, peered down at the still, broken shape on the flagstones below. His face, moments before flushed with rage and panic, went unnervingly calm, calculating. He saw the unnatural angle of Julian's limbs, the stillness. Instantaneous. He grabbed Serafina's wrist, his grip like steel. No, he commanded, his voice low but absolute. It's too late for him, Serafina. Calling now sends us both to prison. Her eyes widened in disbelief, horror warring with confusion. But, Elias, we have to. Just then, the distant wail of sirens pierced the twilight, growing steadily louder. A neighbor must have heard her scream. The decision was made for them, in a way. Pressure mounted, thick and suffocating. By the time flashing blue and red lights painted the luxurious facade of the beach house, Elias and Serafina had retreated inside, composing themselves with chilling speed. A frantic, whispered conference, a desperate fabrication coalescing from the shock. The story: Julian had arrived unexpectedly, heavily intoxicated, distraught over business failures. They argued, pleaded with him about his drinking. He'd stormed out onto the balcony in a drunken rage and tragically tripped, falling over the railing. An accident. A terrible, regrettable accident. Elias, leveraging decades of high-stakes negotiation skills, played the role of the devastated, grieving father to perfection, his voice choked with convincing anguish as he recounted the lie to the first responding officers. Serafina, pale and trembling authentically beneath her practiced tears, corroborated every detail between shuddering sobs. The Thorne name, the imposing presence of Elias, bought them a degree of deference. Preliminary statements were taken, the scene secured. Everything, superficially, pointed towards tragedy. Once the police departed, leaving an eerie quiet in their wake, the real work of weaving the lie began. Inside the house, now feeling like a mausoleum, they meticulously dissected their alibi. Every detail had to be perfect. When had Julian arrived? What precisely was said during this fictional argument about alcohol? How exactly did he stumble? Serafina, her face ashen, wavered. Elias, shouldn't we just tell them what happened? Her voice shook. Elias fixed her with a gaze as cold and hard as diamonds. And then what, Serafina? We rot in prison? Julian is still gone. Is that the outcome you prefer? This is survival now. Fear, sharp and primal, won out over her faltering conscience. She nodded numbly. Before dawn broke, Elias was on the phone, first to his formidable lawyer, setting the legal defenses in motion, then to his PR team, crafting a narrative of a troubled son lost too soon. Meanwhile, Serafina moved through the house like a ghost, erasing their presence, their affair. A stray earring retrieved from the bedside table, lipstick traces wiped from a wine glass, any lingering scent of her perfume masked. When detectives returned for more detailed questioning later that morning, they faced a united front of composed grief, their fabricated story delivered flawlessly. They had weathered the initial storm, exchanging a look fraught with shared guilt and terror as the detectives left. But both knew this fragile deception was only the beginning, the real scrutiny was yet to come. They had weathered the initial storm, the first wave of police questions deflected by practiced grief and the weight of the Thorne name. But as Elias Thorne and Serafina Bellwether retreated into the heavy silence of the beach house, both knew the fragile peace wouldn't last. The real scrutiny, the kind that couldn't be swayed by reputation or tears, was just beginning. It arrived in the form of Detective Isabella Rossi, a seasoned investigator with sharp eyes and an intuition honed by years wading through carefully constructed lies. The official report, tragic accident, grieving family, felt too neat, too clean. Something nagged at her. Rossi started digging, meticulously reviewing every piece of evidence. The crime scene photos were unsettling. The angle of Julian's body relative to the low balcony railing didn't quite scream accidental trip. Then came the forensics report. The toxicology screen showed barely a trace of alcohol in Julian's system, certainly not enough to cause the level of impairment described in Elias and Serafina's tearful accounts. Inconsistencies began stacking up like damning bricks. Witness testimony from neighbors painted a different picture. Several recalled hearing furious shouting, distinctly male, erupting from the house shortly before the fall. Crucially, one neighbor specifically remembered a woman's terrified scream just before the sickening thud of impact, not after. And nobody mentioned seeing Julian behaving erratically or appearing drunk earlier that day. Rossi pulled Julian Thorne's background reports, talked to friends, former business associates. They described a young man burdened by expectation, certainly, perhaps prone to bouts of melancholy, but a serious drinking problem? No evidence. The story Elias presented, of a son lost to alcoholism, simply didn't hold water. Meanwhile, behind the closed doors of the Thorne empire, the pressure was becoming unbearable. The shared secret, once a source of illicit intimacy, now festered between Elias and Serafina, turning toxic. Guilt manifested as paranoia, then blame. Short tempers flared into bitter arguments. Who was truly responsible? Whose mistake led them here? The desperate alliance forged in the moments after Julian's death began to crumble under the weight of their shared deception. Trust evaporated, replaced by suspicion and resentment. Serafina, perhaps less accustomed to the ruthless self-preservation Elias embodied, cracked first. Haunted by Julian's face, worn down by sleepless nights and Rossi's probing questions, she finally broke during an interrogation. The confession spilled out amidst tears of remorse and terror: the affair, the ugly confrontation, Elias's desperate move to stop Julian exposing them, the horrifying fall. When Detective Rossi presented Elias with Serafina's statement, the game was truly over. He saw it instantly. The carefully constructed facade shattered. Perhaps in that moment, a flicker of something deeper surfaced, a realization that this tragedy wasn't just about a push, but about a lifetime of neglect that paved the way. With a chillingly calm demeanor that masked whatever turmoil lay beneath, Julian Thorne confessed, corroborating the essential facts of Serafina's account, acknowledging his role in the physical act that sent his son plunging to his death. The truth, raw and devastating, was finally out, setting the stage for a courtroom drama that would grip the city. The confessions, extracted under the weight of guilt and relentless investigation, flung open the doors to a public spectacle. The ensuing trial was everything the media had hoped for: a sensational cascade of sordid details, forbidden passion, and familial betrayal played out under the harsh glare of courtroom lights. The carefully guarded secrets of the Thorne dynasty were dissected daily, the tragic narrative stripped bare. Julian Thorne, once an untouchable titan of industry, sat stoically, his face an unreadable mask, while Serafina Bellwether, visibly diminished, seemed to oscillate between remorse and sheer terror. The illusion of Crestview Estates' perfection shattered completely, replaced by the ugly reality of human failing. In the end, the scales of justice delivered their verdict. Julian Thorne, the powerful entrepreneur, was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter for the push that sent his son over the railing, compounded by the calculated obstruction of justice in the cover-up. His sentence, 15 years behind bars, a stark reckoning for a life built on control now utterly lost. Serafina Bellwether received a lighter sentence, 5 years for her role in the conspiracy to conceal the truth, her cooperation with the investigation acknowledged by the court. Justice, at least in its legal definition, had been served. The consequences were rendered. But what solace could be found in the wreckage? Did the truth, finally exposed, offer any form of redemption? It seemed unlikely. The trial laid bare the destructive nature of secrets allowed to fester within the complex dynamics of a family already fractured by neglect and unspoken resentment. It highlighted the terrible price of unchecked ambition when it collides with deep-seated emotional voids. Julian Thorne's immense wealth and towering legacy proved utterly useless shields against the fallout from basic human vulnerability, passion, and panic. His empire couldn't buy back his son, nor could it erase the stain of betrayal. Serafina's quest for stability ultimately led her to a prison cell, her intelligence and resilience no match for the destructive forces she became entangled with. Julian Thorne remained the ultimate victim, a casualty of a toxic triangle fueled by his father's emotional distance and the complex desires of the woman he loved. The truth brought consequences, yes, but no comfort. Only shattered lives, a tarnished name, and the chilling reminder that some actions cast shadows so long and dark, they linger forever, long after the gavel falls and the headlines fade.